In the early years after Robert's rebellion, when the realm was still healing from war, a strange offer was made, an offer that would change the fate of Westeros forever. Lord Eddard Stark, known for his honor and cold northern ways, was summoned to King's Landing not just to serve as Warden of the North, but to help keep the fragile peace between powerful houses. Tywin Lannister, cold and cunning, had his own plans. The war was won, but trust was broken. Houses didn't forget betrayal. One evening, in the chambers of the Red Keep, Ned and Tywin met alone. Robert had grown tired of ruling, drunk more than he commanded. The real strength behind the throne rested with those two men. "You and I, Lord Stark, are not so different," Tywin had said, pouring wine but not smiling. "You fight for honor. I fight for legacy. Both roads lead to the same place, control." Ned didn't speak much. His jaw was tight. He didn't like Lannisters, and he especially didn't like Tywin's tone. But then Tywin offered something strange, a shared ward. Raise a boy together. Your heir and mine. Let him grow between ice and gold. Let him become the future Westeros needs. A bridge, not a sword. At first Ned refused. He would never send his son, Robb, to live with the Lannisters. But Robert, drunk and tired of politics, saw it as a clever fix. "If your boys grow together," Robert said, "maybe our lords will stop killing each other." Catelyn wept when Ned agreed. But in the end, Robb Stark, just a boy of 7, was sent to Casterly Rock for half the year, and spent the other half in Winterfell. Under the guidance of two very different fathers, Tywin treated him like a student of war, taught him politics, strategy, the value of fear. "Respect is a lie. Fear is real," he would say. Ned, in contrast, taught him duty, loyalty, and the weight of every decision. "A lord must protect the weak," Ned would remind him every time they watched men train in the yard. Robb grew tall and sharp, his mind forged in two worlds. In the Rock, he wore golden clothes and listened to the whispers of councilmen. In the North, he wore wolf furs and rode through snowstorms. He became more than just a boy. He became a legend waiting to rise. But people whispered. The bannermen in the North hated the idea of a Stark raised by Lannisters. They said Robb would forget his roots. They feared he would become like Joffrey, spoiled and cruel. Meanwhile, the West Lords in Casterly Rock didn't trust a boy of ice in their golden halls. "He'll betray us someday," they muttered. Just like his father, but Robb wasn't listening to whispers. He listened to the clash of steel, to the quiet words of Maester Luwin, to the fury in Tywin's war lessons, and somewhere between those lessons, Robb began to form his own ideas of power, of peace, of ruling differently. He would visit King's Landing often, sitting quietly beside the Iron Throne, listening to his uncle King Robert laugh while the small council argued like crows. Once, while walking with Arya in the gardens, she said, "You're not like anyone here, Robb." He smiled. "That's because I'm not supposed to be." But behind all of this, trouble was brewing. Queen Cersei hated the boy. She saw Robb as a threat to her son Joffrey and even to her father's loyalty. "He's a wolf in lion's skin," she spat to Jaime once. "And he's growing teeth." Jaime just smirked. "He's your father's favorite, sister. Maybe more than you ever were." And so Robb Stark, the boy raised by two enemies, was growing into something the realm had never seen before. But Westeros is not kind to legends, especially ones raised by wolves and lions. Years passed. Robb Stark was no longer a boy being pulled between two worlds. He was now a young man of 17, tall, commanding, and sharper than any blade in the Red Keep's armory. People had begun to call him the Wolf Lion, half in respect, half in fear. His name carried weight in the court, not just because of who raised him, but because of how he moved through the world, silent, observant, and dangerous in ways people didn't fully understand. One day, Robb was walking through the Hall of Banners at Casterly Rock when Tywin summoned him. The old lion looked tired, more so than usual, though his pride refused to show it. "You've grown into a man," Tywin said, without looking up from the table filled with letters, maps, and reports. "A man must choose where he belongs." Robb said nothing. Tywin lifted his cold eyes. "You cannot be both Stark and Lannister forever." Robb knew this talk was coming. He had felt the pull between the north and the west getting stronger with each moon. The Stark bannerman wrote more often now, requesting his return to Winterfell. The Lannisters whispered behind his back, wondering when Tywin would name him heir over Jaime, who remained the King's Guard's golden disgrace. But before Robb could respond, a raven arrived from Winterfell. The news turned the air heavy. Bran Stark was dead, a fall from the tower, they said. But something didn't sit right. The words were too clean, the timing too sudden. Catelyn's letter was smudged with tears. She didn't believe it was an accident. Neither did Robb. "I should go north," Robb said, voice tight. Tywin didn't blink. "And what will you do there?" "Dig into dirt for answers that don't exist." The boy fell. "That's what boys do. They fall." Robb clenched his jaw. He had learned a lot from Tywin: strategy, control, patience. But not how to ignore the death of a brother. He traveled north anyway. When he arrived in Winterfell, it felt different. Colder, not the weather, but the people. The Stark bannerman looked at him with narrowed eyes, not with pride, but suspicion. His clothes were too fine, his tone too polished. Even Jon Snow, his half-brother, didn't smile the way he used to. "You sound like a Lannister now," Jon said one night. "And you still sound like a bastard," Robb replied coldly, then regretted it immediately. But damage was done. Maester Luwin took him aside. "The North needs you, Robb, but not as Tywin's pupil. They need you as a Stark," Robb understood. But which part of him was more real? The boy who learned to hunt in the snow, or the young man who studied war with the most ruthless lord in Westeros? Then came more news. Jon Arryn was dead, whispers of poison, of secrets. And suddenly King Robert was riding north, bringing the whole court with him. Cersei, Joffrey, Jaime, even Littlefinger and Varys slithered along. It was not just a visit. It was the calm before a storm. Tywin didn't come, but he sent Robb a letter. "The game begins. Choose your side wisely, or you will be eaten by both." When Robert arrived, he was older, slower, and more tired than Robb remembered. But he hugged him like a son. "You've got Ned's frown and Tywin's glare." "Gods help us all," Cersei was colder. Her eyes scanned Robb like a threat. "You've grown," she said sweetly. "But whose blood flows stronger in you, I wonder?" Robb didn't answer. But her son, Joffrey, had a look in his eye that Robb didn't like. That same spoiled sneer Robb remembered from their time at court. One evening, Joffrey insulted Arya at the feast, called her a wild dog. She threw a goblet at him. He rose, red-faced, to hit her, but Robb was faster. He grabbed Joffrey's wrist mid-air. "Touch my sister and I'll break your hand," Robb said calmly. The entire hall went silent. Cersei rose like a snake ready to strike, but Robert laughed drunkenly. "That's the wolf in him. Let the boy have teeth." But it wasn't over. That night, someone tried to kill Arya in her room. A shadowed figure with a knife, Arya screamed. Robb was the first to arrive. The would-be assassin escaped, but the blade remained. A finely crafted Valyrian steel dagger with a lion carved on its hilt. Robb stared at it long and hard. He remembered Tywin once saying, "Always use a dagger when you want to frame a fool. It's quieter than a sword and messier than poison." Was it a warning, a message, or a trap? Robb knew now. Bran's fall wasn't an accident. Arya's attack wasn't random. Someone wanted the Stark children dead, and maybe, just maybe, that someone once taught him how to kill without leaving a trail. Robb stood over the dagger for a long time after Arya was safe. His hands trembled slightly, not with fear, but with rage. He knew what this was. Not just a warning, not just an attack. This was a message from someone who knew him too well. Someone who taught him how to make it look like someone else did it. And there was only one man in Westeros who taught him that lesson: Tywin Lannister. But why? Was it punishment for returning to the North without permission? Or was Tywin trying to sever Robb's bond with the Starks completely? A reminder that loyalty came with blood, not warmth. He couldn't sleep that night. He sat in the Godswood alone, staring at the heart tree, remembering the voice of his father, Ned Stark, whispering about honor, justice, and always protecting family. Then he remembered Tywin's cold warning: blood is cheap. Power is what matters. Robb was caught between two ghosts. One with a sword, the other with a pen. both shaping him, both waiting to see which man he would become. The next morning, Arya refused to be hidden away. She demanded a sword. Robb gave her one. "You'll train with Sir Roderick," he said. "I want to train with you," she shot back. Robb smirked. "I'm not here to play." "Neither am I." He looked into her eyes and saw their father again, strong, stubborn, stark to the bone, so he agreed. But while Arya trained, Robb began his own silent war. He sent ravens, one to Varys, with whom he had traded whispers in King's Landing before, one to Bronn, the sellsword who owed him a favor from years ago, and one, most carefully written, to Jaime Lannister. He didn't trust Jaime, but he knew something about him now. Jaime hated being used, and if Tywin was moving pieces without telling his own son, that was a crack Robb could use. Days later, a raven returned from Jaime. "If you believe the old lion still tells me everything, then you don't know him as well as he thinks. I had no part in the girl's attack, but I suggest you start watching your back before he decides you're more Stark than Lannister." It wasn't a confession, but it wasn't a lie either. That night, Robb confronted Littlefinger in the Great Hall. "I want to know who brought that dagger into Winterfell," Robb said plainly. Petter Baelish gave his usual sly smile. "Why, Robb? Such sharpness, just like your Uncle Eddard. And we all know how that ended." Robb slammed his hand on the table. "This isn't a game." Littlefinger leaned closer. "Everything is a game, and you're starting to play it." He didn't give Robb a name, but he gave him a trail, one that led Robb back to something he had almost forgotten: Jon Snow. Robb found Jon on the battlements, looking out over the snow-covered trees, his black cloak already marked with the sigil of the Night's Watch. He was set to leave for Castle Black in 2 days. "You think I did it?" Jon asked bitterly after Robb questioned him. "No," Robb said. "I think someone wants me to think you did." Jon gave a hollow laugh. "Wouldn't be the first time someone tried to blame a bastard." Robb stepped beside him. "Do you still want to go?" "I have to. It's the only place I belong." "No," Robb said. "You belong here. With family." Jon looked at him, confused. "You think I'm family now? After all these years between Winterfell and the Rock? I was raised by 2 of the most dangerous men in Westeros, and neither of them ever made me feel like a brother." "You did," Jon's eyes lowered. "For a moment they were just 2 boys again, but the moment didn't last, because the very next day Catelyn Stark was poisoned. Not dead, but close." She collapsed during breakfast, frothing at the mouth, gasping for air. Maester Luwin worked endlessly to keep her breathing. Arya screamed. Sansa fainted. Robb stood still, fists clenched, eyes burning with a fury he had never felt before, and once again the assassin had vanished. No guard saw anyone. No cupbearer could be found. No servant remembered anything, but someone had sent another message. "You are not safe." And neither are they. That night, Robb sat by his mother's bedside, holding her hand as she slipped in and out of sleep. Her skin was cold, her lips cracked, but she whispered something before she drifted away again. "Don't. Trust the lion." Robb left the room, heart hardened. He knew now he could not stay in between anymore. He couldn't be the bridge. He had to choose, and if Tywin Lannister wanted to test the wolf's teeth, then he would finally see what kind of monster he had raised. The halls of Winterfell had never been so quiet. The howling winds outside were loud, but inside it was silence that screamed the most. Catelyn Stark still lay pale and weak, Maester Luwin watching her every breath. The servants whispered. The guards doubled their patrols. No one trusted anyone. Robb stood in the great hall, eyes fixed on the banners that hung from the walls. The direwolf of House Stark, the lion of House Lannister. For 17 years, both had shaped him. Now both felt like poison. He called a meeting that night, only his most trusted Jon, Arya, Maester Luwin, Sir Roderick, and Theon Greyjoy, who still lived in Winterfell like a hostage, dressed as a friend. Robb didn't sit. He stood at the head of the table like a commander. "Someone tried to kill my sister," he began. "Then my mother. The same person who killed Bran." The room stiffened. Jon clenched his fists. "You think it's Tywin?" "I think it's someone close to him. Or someone acting in his shadow? Theon leaned forward, arms crossed. You think this is war? Robb's jaw tightened. I think it already started, but war wasn't just swords and armies. It was whispers, lies, traps, and Robb had learned from the very best. He sent a raven to Tywin, a letter cold and sharp. A lion who kills its own cubs does not deserve a crown. The North remembers. And so do I. No titles, no respect, just a warning. He knew it would bring fire. And that's exactly what he wanted. Over the next week, Catelyn began to recover slowly, but her voice was weak, and her mind wandered. One night she whispered, "Don't let Sansa go south. Promise me." Robb nodded, holding her hand. But it was too late, because King Robert had summoned Sansa to ride back with the royal procession to King's Landing. "She's of age," he said, "and a Stark girl should be seen at court." Cersei had insisted. She even offered to take personal care of the girl. It wasn't a request. It was a trap dressed as a gift. Robb stood in Robert's chamber the next day, refusing. "She stays here," he said. Robert, already drunk, narrowed his eyes. "Don't test me, boy." "I'm not testing you," Robb said calmly. "I'm protecting my family." Cersei stepped forward, eyes burning. "She would be safer with us than in a frozen fortress crawling with traitors and northern filth." Robb's hand drifted to his sword. "Say that again," he said, but Robert raised his hand. "Enough, the girl stays. Let the lion and the wolf gnaw on each other another day." That was it. The last thread of peace snapped. That night, Tywin Lannister arrived unexpectedly in Winterfell, with a small escort and even smaller smile. "I came to see the boy who walks like a lion and thinks like a wolf," he said, sitting by the fire in Robb's chamber. Robb didn't smile. "You came to see if your father's pet turned against him." Tyrion sipped wine. "Well, have you?" Robb looked at him. "He tried to kill my mother, my sister. He already killed Bran." Tyrion didn't deny it, just shrugged. "Tywin Lannister doesn't see family. He sees weapons. You were the sharpest he ever forged." Robb leaned forward. "Then he should have never dropped the blade." Tyrion's smile faded. "You've made a choice, haven't you?" Robb nodded. "I'm done being both." Tyrion sighed and stood. "Then may the gods help us all, because the man coming for you now doesn't forgive. He destroys." When Tyrion left, Jon entered. "Word from the south," Jon said. "The Lannisters are moving troops near the Riverlands." "How many?" "Too many." Robb looked at the fire, then at the sword hanging by the wall. Ice, the ancestral blade of House Stark. "Call the bannermen," Robb said. Jon blinked. "All of them?" "All of them," Robb said coldly. "Every house loyal to the north. Every man who still remembers what a Stark looks like. We ride south, and if they won't fight—" Jon asked. "They will," Robb said, "because they're tired of kneeling to lions." As dawn broke over Winterfell, the sound of horns echoed across the walls. Ravens flew. Horses were saddled. Armor polished. For the first time in 100 years, the North stirred for war, not because of a king's command, but because of a son's vengeance. And Robb Stark, no longer the shared heir, no longer the boy between two houses, was riding out not as a bridge between lion and wolf, but as the storm that would tear both down. The banners of the North flew high and proud, direwolves stitched in grey on white, flapping against the cold wind, as thousands of men marched under them. From White Harbour to the Dreadfort, the old houses answered Robb's call, not because they loved him, but because they feared what was coming. The Riverlands were burning. Tywin Lannister had moved faster than anyone expected, and yet it wasn't fear of Tywin that stirred the North into motion. It was anger. The kind that sits in the bones. The kind that remembers. They didn't forget Bran's fall. They didn't forget the attempt on Arya. And they certainly didn't forgive the poisoning of Lady Stark, who still lay weak in bed. Tywin had tried to break a house that endures winter itself. Robb led the march, not in golden armor, but in blackened steel. No lions on his chest, only the dire wolf of House Stark. The message was clear. He was no one's ward now. By his side rode Jon Snow, recently granted leave from joining the Night's Watch, if only temporarily. Maester Aemon had allowed it after reading a sealed letter from Robb. What Robb had written, no one knew. But whatever it was, it worked. They rode through the Wolfswood, then down past the Neck, where they were met by House Tully's riders. Lord Hoster was bedridden, but Edmure greeted Robb with open arms and a nervous smile. "You're young for a war," Edmure said. Robb stared straight ahead. So was Aegon. In River Run, Robb gathered his war council. Lords, knights, and even some reluctant Freys filled the room. But the seat at his right wasn't taken by a nobleman. It was Jon. That alone made the room uneasy. "He's a bastard," Lord Serwyn muttered under his breath. "He's my brother," Robb answered. "And he rides with me." Still, not everyone in the Riverlands welcomed him. Ravens came with rumors. In King's Landing, Joffrey Baratheon had been crowned king after Robert's sudden and suspicious death during a hunting trip. But Robb had known Robert. The man could drink himself into a coma, but he wasn't careless with his life. Then came the worst news of all. Ned Stark was arrested for treason. Robb read the letter from Sansa with shaking hands. "He tried to steal the throne for your brother," it claimed. "He betrayed the king and conspired with enemies." Jon punched the wall so hard his knuckles bled. "He would never do that," Jon growled. "I know," Robb said quietly. "But the realm doesn't." That night, Robb sat alone. He had studied 100 war maps under Tywin's cold gaze. He knew what this was. A trap disguised as politics. The Lannisters were framing Ned to provoke the North into war, and it was working, but they didn't expect Robb to fight like them. He sent ravens, coded, precise, and dangerous. One to Rose Bolton, another to Howland Reed, and one to a contact even more secret. A faceless broker in Braavos, known only as the Crow Without Wings. If Tywin wanted chaos, Robb would drown him in it. A week later, scouts returned. Tywin's army had camped near Harrenhal. His son Jaime, the Kingslayer, had taken a separate force and was marching on River Run. Robb called his commanders. "We split our forces," he said. "Half go south with me to face Tywin head-on. The rest, led by Roose, will take the Kingslayer by surprise. 2 armies?" Lord Karstark frowned. "You risk being crushed on both sides." "I'm not risking anything," Robb said. "I'm calculating." Jon leaned in. "You sound like Tywin." Robb looked at him. "Good. That means I'm learning." As they prepared to move, a shadow moved through the camp and left a sealed letter in Robb's tent. No one saw who delivered it, but it was marked with a sigil Robb hadn't seen in years. A gold lion, crossed by a black slash, Jaime's personal seal. Robb opened it carefully. "I never asked to be part of this war, but if you're half the son he raised you to be, you'll know what to do with what I've enclosed." Tucked inside the letter was a piece of parchment, old and stained. At first it looked meaningless, but as Robb held it to the candlelight, faded words appeared. Queen Cersei Lannister, Sir Jaime Lannister. Their children Joffrey, Myrcella Tommen, born of incest. Illegitimate heirs. Robb stared at the paper, eyes wide. This was it. Proof. The thing Ned had died for. The secret that could tear the Iron Throne apart. Now it was in Robb's hands. Jon stepped into the tent moments later and saw his brother holding it. "What is it?" Robb didn't look up. He just whispered, "The reason my father died." And then louder, "The reason we win." The air was thick with the weight of war. In every corner of the camp, soldiers sharpened blades, fed fires, or whispered nervously about what was coming. But inside Robb Stark's command tent, there was no noise, only quiet, deliberate planning. The letter from Jaime Lannister sat on the table, its damning contents now committed to memory. Robb had read it 10 times, not because he didn't believe it, but because he needed to believe it. He held in his hand the weapon that could destroy the Lannisters without ever raising a sword. Proof that Joffrey Baratheon was not the true king. Proof that Cersei and Jaime had committed incest. And proof that Robert Baratheon had been made a fool. Murdered before he ever saw the truth. Jon stood across from him, arms folded. "If you spread this," Jon said slowly, "they'll say it's a lie." "They'll have to," Robb replied, "because if they admit it's true, the whole realm turns against them." Jon nodded, but his face was tight. Then why not send it now? Expose them. Break the throne. Robb looked up, eyes sharp. Because exposing the truth is only the first step. I want to control what happens after. He already had a plan, one Tywin would never see coming. That night, ravens flew from Robb's tent in every direction, to the Vale, to Dorne, to Old Town, and even beyond the sea. Each letter carried the same message, sealed in wax and blood. The boy King Joffrey is a lie. The Iron Throne is built on incest and murder. The North does not kneel to bastards. Choose your side wisely. He didn't ask for help. He gave them a choice. If they chose silence, they would burn with the Lannisters. By the time Robb's army reached the outskirts of Harrenhal, Tywin's campfires lit the night like stars. 10,000 men waited for him, dug in behind the burnt-out ruins of Harrenhal's black towers. Tywin had chosen the battlefield. He wanted Robb to bleed here, but Robb didn't stop. He didn't falter. He vanished. At dawn, Tywin rose, expecting a battle. What he found instead was an empty northern camp. Fires smoldering, but no enemy in sight. He cursed. Realizing too late, Robb had feinted south, and was now circling back toward the Riverlands. 3 days later, Roose Bolton's forces ambushed Jaime Lannister's army near the Red Fork. The fighting was brutal, wet, muddy, and merciless. Bolton's men fought like shadows, striking hard, then vanishing, drawing Jaime's knights into a killing ground. And then, just as the sun set, Robb Stark arrived. He hit the Lannister flank with 3,000 cavalry, tearing through their golden armor like wolves through sheep. The Kingslayer himself was captured in the chaos, thrown from his horse and knocked unconscious. By the end of the night, the field was silent. Robb stood over Jaime's bound body. The Kingslayer smirked through the blood on his lips. "You're learning." "That was almost Lannister clever." "I'm done learning," Robb said coldly. "Now I'm teaching." The news spread like wildfire across the Seven Kingdoms. Jaime Lannister had been captured. The Riverlands were secured. The North had won its first great victory, but even greater news followed days later. The bastard king is not the king at all. Whispers turned to rumors and rumors into rage. In the Reach, several houses pulled their banners from King's Landing. In Dorne, Prince Doran Martell remained silent but didn't deny the news. And in the Vale, young Robin Arryn's regents declared neutrality, but his mother, Lady Lisa, sent a private raven to Robb. "The Lannisters took my sister's life. I owe them a debt, and debts are paid." Westeros was splitting open, and Robb hadn't even drawn his full blade yet, but not all was won. Inside the walls of King's Landing, Cersei Lannister was spiraling. Her son was a bastard. Her lover, her brother, was a prisoner. The North had risen. The throne was cracking. She demanded action. Varys whispered poison in her ear. Littlefinger poured wine and offered plots, but it was Joffrey, mad, cruel Joffrey, who made the next move. He ordered the execution of Eddard Stark to send a message to break the North spirit. Raven came to Robb in the middle of the night. He didn't speak when he read the letter. Didn't cry, didn't scream. He simply placed it on the fire and watched the flames eat the words. Eddard Stark, confessed traitor, executed at King's Landing. Head displayed at the sept. Jon stood beside him, waiting for Robb to say something. Instead, Robb turned, picked up his sword and said quietly, "We march." Jon swallowed. "To where?" Robb looked out into the cold black horizon. "To burn the lion's den to the ground." The march south was silent, too silent. No singing, no boasting, not even whispered prayers. The northern host moved like a shadow, black banners fluttering against blood-colored skies. Robb Stark rode at the front, his face carved from ice, eyes like steel. His father was dead, betrayed, butchered, and displayed like a warning. But Robb wasn't scared. He was furious. Every mile they crossed brought them closer to King's Landing and to vengeance. Lords who once doubted him now followed without question. They had seen the truth. This wasn't the boy raised by wolves and lions. This was the storm both had feared. A Stark who knew how to fight like a Lannister. But with the heart of the North, Jon Snow remained close, though even he struggled to speak. Ned Stark was the only father he ever knew. Now that man's head was rotting on a spike in the capital. Rage boiled inside him, but it was Robb who carried it like a weapon. "We'll kill Joffrey," Jon said one night by the fire. "And Cersei? Burn the Red Keep and salt the ground." Robb didn't answer. He was staring at the flames like he saw something deeper. "Something worse. We'll do more than kill them," Robb said at last. "We'll erase their name." But not everyone wanted blood. A raven arrived at dawn, a secret message from Tyrion Lannister, now acting as Hand of the King. "You've won the people. The crown bleeds. Let us end this before the whole realm burns." Attached was a promise, a truce. "Surrender, Jaime, receive Ned's bones, and claim independence for the north." Some lords, weary of war, urged Robb to consider it. "He offers peace," Lord Glover said. "The realm is tired. We could end this with honor." But Robb looked at the seal on the letter, a lion pressed into red wax, and shook his head. "My father died for honor," Robb said. "Let the Lannisters die for peace." The army moved again, carving through the crownlands with terrifying speed. Towns surrendered before swords were drawn. Peasants cheered. The poor, broken people of the south had had enough of lions wearing crowns and wolves locked in cages. As they neared the capital, something changed. They found no resistance, no scouts, no banners, no ambushes. King's Landing had gone. Silent, suspicious, Robb sent Jon and a dozen scouts ahead under cover of night. What they found chilled them more than any battlefield. The gates of the city were open, and the people, rioting, screaming, fires lit the skyline. The gold cloaks, the city watch, had turned on themselves. Half loyal to the crown, half loyal to gold. No king in sight. No queen. Robb marched into the capital with an army behind him. And no battle waiting. The Red Keep loomed, blood red in the rising sun. The gates were shut but not guarded. A single figure stood at the front steps, holding a white flag. Tyrion. He bowed as Robb approached, hands empty. "You were faster than expected," he said calmly. Robb's eyes narrowed. "Where are they?" Tyrion gestured behind him. "Gone. Cersei, Joffrey, and Tommen fled 3 nights ago. Took the royal fleet. Headed for the Rock." Jon stepped forward. "Cowards," Tyrion didn't argue. "Call them what you like, but their absence means one thing. The capital is yours." Robb didn't respond. He walked past Tyrion and entered the Red Keep with sword in hand. Room after room, he found signs of panic. Abandoned food, broken doors, shattered armor. But then, in the throne room, he found someone waiting, Sansa, alone, pale, dressed in black. Her eyes were hollow. But when she saw Robb, she dropped to her knees and sobbed. "I tried to stop them," she whispered. "They locked me away when Father died. I didn't know what to do." Robb lifted her to her feet and held her. "You survived," he said. "That's all that matters." But she clutched his tunic and whispered, "Robb, there's something you don't know." He pulled back. "What?" She looked toward the throne. "It wasn't just the Lannisters. Father's death. Someone else gave the order. Someone we trusted." Robb froze. Sansa's eyes were wet with terror. Littlefinger. He told the Queen about Father's plans. He gave her the guards. He betrayed him, and suddenly the pieces snapped into place. The smiles, the false help, the secrets Petter Baelish had offered in the name of loyalty. Robb's rage boiled again, but colder this time, sharper. The man who had played both sides, the man who grew rich off chaos. "He's still here," Sansa whispered. "In the city, hiding." Robb turned to Jon. "Seal the gates. Find him." The bells of King's Landing tolled, not for a king, not for a wedding, not even for war. They rang for judgment. Robb Stark stood at the top of the Red Keep, the Iron Throne behind him, his sword ice in hand. The cold steel shimmered under the morning sun, stained already with the memory of battles past. His cloak was black, trimmed in grey fur, a direwolf clasp at his shoulder. He did not look like a boy. He did not look like a prince. He looked like a reckoning. Jon Snow stood to his right. Sansa to his left, cloaked in silence. Her face was unreadable, pale, distant, but her eyes burned. She hadn't spoken since she revealed the truth. Littlefinger had betrayed their father, and now After hours of searching the city, they had found him, dragged from the brothel he called home. Peter Baelish stood before the people, hands bound, clothes torn, and charm finally shattered. His silver tongue had saved him many times, but not today. Today even his words felt small. "You don't understand," he said, his voice desperate as he faced Robb. "I kept the kingdom from tearing itself apart." Robb's voice was calm, too calm. "No, you helped tear it apart. You used my father. You sold his honor for influence. You whispered lies into every ear that would listen, and now the realm burns because of you." Baelish's eyes flicked between the faces watching him. "Lords, small folk, soldiers, all silent. I did what I had to do," he insisted. "To survive." Robb stepped forward, eyes fixed. "And my father died for it. The court expected a trial. A speech. Something to delay what was coming. They didn't get it." Robb turned to Jon and simply said, "Kneel him." Jon grabbed Littlefinger by the shoulder and forced him down before the Iron Throne. Baelish's voice broke. "You can't, Robb, please. I loved your mother. I protected Sansa." But Robb lifted ice, and for the first time in years it sang through the air. "I am not my father," Robb said, "but I remember what he taught me. The man who passes the sentence should swing the sword." And then, with one clean, brutal stroke, he brought the blade down. When it was done, no one clapped. No one cheered. The silence was not fear. It was respect. Sansa turned away. She didn't cry. Jon stood firm, and Robb looked down at the man who had played gods and kings for years, and finally lost to justice. Later that night, a meeting was held in the small council chamber. But this was no council of Lannisters or scheming vipers. It was a table of survivors. Robb, Jon, Sansa, Arya, who had arrived that afternoon, dusty and worn from her secret journey back to the capital. Davos, sent by Stannis as a peace offering. Tyrion Lannister, still technically a prisoner, now treated as an advisor in chains. "We control the city," Jon said. "But not the realm," Robb nodded. "We don't need to control the realm. Just shape what comes next." Arya leaned forward. "What about the Queen and Joffrey?" Robb turned to Tyrion. "Where did they go?" Tyrion sighed. "Casterly Rock, most likely. But they won't stay there long. Cersei will raise armies. Gold wins loyalty, and the Lannisters have enough to buy half the world." Sansa finally spoke. "Then we don't let her buy time." The table looked to Robb. He had always been the bridge between wolf and lion, but now he was something else entirely. "We hold the capital," he said. "We have the throne. We have the people, and the truth," Jon added. Robb stood. "Then we use all of it." In the days that followed, ravens flew once more from the Red Keep, not in surrender, but in declaration. "Joffrey Baratheon is no true king. The Iron Throne is a lie. From this day forward, the North is free, and the South must choose. Peace under truth, or war for a bastard's claim." Some bent the knee. House Tully, House Arryn, even parts of the Reach. The Stormlands splintered. The South smouldered. But Robb Stark did not wait. With Jon and Arya beside him, he led an army west to confront the last Lannisters. He didn't march for gold or conquest. He marched for his father. 1 year later, the war was over. Cersei Lannister was captured. Her crown shattered, her legacy turned to ash. Joffrey's body was found on the shores near the Rock, stabbed, his face bloated with sea-water and cowardice. No one mourned him. Tyrion vanished, his chains unlocked. Some say Arya let him go. Others say he never left the capital at all. But Robb Stark returned to Winterfell, not as a wolf raised in a lion's den, but as the king in truth. Not of Westeros, not of titles, but of justice. And justice in the end had Stark blood in it.